Though you are God, you refused to poll rank and parade your power among us. Instead, you chose to step down into our experience, living among us as one of us, with all the struggle and suffering that goes with being human. More than that, you adopted the role of servant, washing feet, serving people of no reputation or social standing, and giving yourself completely. As incredible as it sounds, you are the God who serves, and we can respond in no other way than to give ourselves to you in praise. Amen. James and John, Zebedee's sons, came to Jesus and said, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. They said, "Allow one of us to sit on your right and the other on your left when you enter your glory." Jesus replied, "You don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup I drink or receive the baptism I receive?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said, "You will drink the cup I drink and receive the baptism I receive, but to sit at my right or left hand isn't mine to give. It belongs to those for whom it has been prepared." Now when the other 10 disciples heard about this, they became angry with James and John. Jesus called them over and said, "You know that the ones who are considered the rulers by the Gentiles show off their authority over them, and their high-ranking officials order them around. But that's not the way it will be with you. Whoever wants to be great among you will be your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you will be the slave of all. For the human one didn't come to be served, but rather to serve, and to give his life to liberate many people."
What were they thinking? Having listened to all that Jesus had to say in lesson after lesson about service, about humility, this is their idea? James and John pull Jesus aside privately and ask for a promotion? They say, "We'd like to be the leaders around here." The other 10 disciples found out about the conversation that went on behind their backs, and they weren't that happy about it. When I served on the board of ordained ministry, we noticed that those who came to their calling to ministry with outsized confidence were the ones who really could benefit from some deeper questioning about their call and some careful listening by members of the board. Those who came saying some version of, "I've tried every way not to respond to this call, but in the end, this calling just wouldn't leave me alone. And so here I am, Lord." Those whose humility was in evidence from the start end up being good solid ministry candidates. But we can relate, can't we? There have been times when we have felt like we are the most qualified, the best person for the job. We chafe under the leadership of others when we think that we could do the better job. Maybe like James and John, we are searching for our place, and we have enthusiasm and ambition rising in our hearts. Are we saying that's a bad thing? I don't think that's always a bad thing. Not the martyred little red hen kind of service where we say, well, I guess I'll have to do all of this because no one else will. Not the look at me, I'm doing everything service that we associate with poor Martha, so frustrated with her sister Mary sitting at Jesus' feet. Sometimes, like the disciples, we end up with conflict over all of this jockeying for position in our churches, in our workplaces, our families, and our neighborhoods. We misunderstand and misinterpret each other. We know we all belong, but how exactly? The fact is, like the disciples, we're all searching for the same thing, this somewhere to belong. And in order to belong in a community, a family, a workplace, we understand most of the time that we have to offer ourselves with as much grace and joy and humility as we can muster. When we orient ourselves toward this value of belonging, in our own belonging and the belonging of others, we're more likely to act as though we value one another, that we honor the gifts that each has to offer, and we can focus on the work that is ours to do, building a framework for community. Have you noticed when life gets really tough, being a part of a community where we feel like we really belong gets us through hard times and reminds us of our purpose? We are invited to build life-giving partnerships. James and John were missing it, but sometimes building belonging isn't big or glorious stuff. We might think about someone swinging by a store and buying drinks for the children of the church and dropping them off in the middle of the week. We might think about leadership board members who are investing their time being concerned about configuring our buildings for safety. We might think about taking a turn to provide hospitality at fellowship time. Sometimes our most meaningful witnesses are the everyday things. We are invited to build the Spirit-filled community with each other, one day, one act of service at a time. This is a good time to consider the needs of our neighborhood. At Marquette Hope, we've done our best to welcome our neighbors in. Our doormats get worn out, and sometimes our door hardware, which makes me happy. We have to negotiate endless issues about whose stuff is where and who's in what part of our buildings, when, and doing what. We're doing our best to provide safety and hospitality to meet the needs of our community. I did a quick conservative estimate of groups in our buildings just this week. Recovery groups, childcare, youth theater, driving school, you name it. And my rough count was somewhere in the neighborhood of 435 people. And that does not include parents dropping children off for activities. We believe that God will guide our imagination and our creativity as we continue to get to know our neighbors and learn more about their needs. To be honest, though, some days we've had about enough creativity. We've been through so much change that if someone says the word liminal around me, I might just throw up, to be honest. We've been in a liminal season and will continue to be in one until further notice. No system likes change if it can be helped. Yet we are called upon to stay present and alert and active and engaged in a world that keeps changing. Our task is to build community even as we rename and reconfigure it. But maybe that's always been the case, and our romanticized perception of decades of static existence never were the case anyway. When I was in St. Ignace last Saturday with the Northern Skies District United Women in Faith, they told me that they have given up making banners. The lower part of our district is on their third name in 7 years, and the banners that were carefully made to represent who they were and what their name was continue to be retired at a rapid rate. God is moving. The Holy Spirit is doing a new thing among us again, despite our attempts to hold who we are in one place, even just for a short time. God is on the move, and so are we. We've been moving through Mark's 10th chapter in the past weeks. First, we talked about Jesus spending time with those society ignores. Then we talked about the dangers of valuing our possessions too highly. Under no circumstances are camels fitting through any needles. This week we have James and John making a power play. Hey, Jesus, we have something we'd like you to do for us, they said. In between, we have these 3 verses that get skipped over in the lectionary. Back on the road, they set out for Jerusalem. Jesus had a head start on them, and they were following, puzzled and not just a little bit afraid. He took the 12 and began again to go over what to expect next. Listen to me carefully. We're on our way up to Jerusalem. When we get there, the Son of Man will be betrayed to the religious leaders and scholars. They will sentence him to death. Then they will hand him over to the Romans, who will mock and spit on him, give him the 3rd degree, and kill him. After 3 days, he will rise alive. The text says that the disciples are scared even before Jesus tells them what is about to happen. Why were they afraid? Because Jesus' teaching thus far had really challenged them? Because Jesus' teaching was challenging other people? Because so much was changing and different from what they expected? Maybe these 3 verses will help us understand what got into James and John. Jesus tells them he will be mocked, betrayed, spit on, and sentenced to death. And their reaction is, can we have a front row seat for that? Jesus isn't as frustrated by their question as we might expect. He responds with patience. Remember last week we read that Jesus looked at people carefully. I love that. I imagine him looking at James and John very carefully. We know that he really knew them, that he really saw them, that he really loved them. So he tells them, you don't know what you're asking. Did you listen to what I was saying? Are you capable of drinking the cup I drink, of being baptized in the baptism I'm about to be plunged into? In the Message translation, they say, sure, why not? Jesus treats them with kindness. In fact, he agrees with them. And then he says this, you've observed how godless rulers throw their weight around, and when people get a little power, how quickly it goes to their heads. It's not going to be that way with you. Whoever wants to be great must become a servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. That is what the Son of Man has done. He came to serve, not to be served, and then to give away his life in exchange for many who are held hostage. We, like the disciples, are a product of our culture, and our culture tells us to put ourselves first. to accomplish all we can by any means that we can. Sometimes others get hurt or left behind along the way, which is too bad for them. Our culture doesn't aspire very much to humility. Jesus offers all 12 disciples, and Jesus offers us this important lesson. Look around. There's all kinds of authority, power being leveraged in all kinds of ways. It's understandable that we'd want to get in on it. But the model we see around us isn't the model we're supposed to be aspiring to. We follow the one who wields ultimate power, and we are invited into God's story as it continues to be our story.
We hope you're enjoying Podchurch. Please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and be notified each time there's a new video. To learn more about everything that's happening in and around Marquette Hope, check out our Facebook page. You can also get our newsletter on the Facebook as well. Podchurch is the weekly online worship of Marquette Hope, a United Methodist faith community located in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Find us at facebook.com/mqthope, mqthope.com, and on